Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and Happy New Year to you. 2025 has rolled round, and let me tell you, the wind is blowing all round the house at the moment. I'm surprised that the chimney pots are still, or the tiles are still on top of the roofs. It may be different where you are, but I can tell you down here on the south coast of England, certainly not travelling about weather, and thank goodness it's a bank holiday, and unless you need to go out, I bloody well wouldn't. Anyway, commiserations must go to the organist's son, who at 15, whilst out skating on New Year's Day, he slipped and cracked his head. He died of a brain tumour or some horrible nasty thing an hour and a half later. That was in 1871. So some time over, so hopefully the family have got over it. But it is sad when you read those sort of things. It was going through my mind a little bit this morning when I read it in a book. Anyway, I want to talk to you about some correspondence that I've had that a chap called John, has had with me. And he said, look, the reason that you're ill, Richard, is nothing to do with all this mysterious fog that's going around, all the spraying in the sky, or all the heavy metals, or the poisoning, the toxins of the environment. No, nothing to do with that. You're obviously just not eating enough fruit. And I said to myself, well, that's probably true. I don't think any of us actually go and eat sufficient amounts of fruit. It's very difficult this time of year, isn't it? And I said, but, I do try to keep myself as healthy. I go to the farm shop and I have some raw milk and all this. He said, no. He said, that's exactly it. You're eating all the wrong stuff. You shouldn't be eating meat, and you shouldn't be having dairy, and for goodness sake, don't have a slice of toast. I thought to myself, blimey, why so, sir? And he wrote back, a very nice gentleman, by the way. I have no qualms with him, but I thought I would share this point of view, his point of view, and see what you make of it, because it's a fascinating concept, I suppose, and in some ways you can't argue with it, although he is talking about a time in which the fruit was freely available, let's say. So he says this: our ancestors lived in tropical regions where fruit was abundant year-round. It was only when we moved to colder climates that we started consuming grains, root vegetables, and then started with milk and eventually meat. Eating grains, animal foods, root vegetables require cooking to be consumed. Before this, we ate like every other being on the planet, eating raw foods. Which foods are digestible to human in its raw form? Fruit, he says. We have similar mouths, jaws, hands, digestive systems to other frugivore primates. We see colour to identify ripeness of fruit. Carnivores don't have colour vision. Don't you think it's strange, he goes on to say, that we are the only beings that cook its food? Do you think cooking improves food? Certainly improves the flavour in some foods, I can tell you that for certain. Carnivores eat the animals while they are alive. They eat the skin, the bone, the internal organs, all while the animal is still warm and blood is gushing. This would make humans want to vomit. And you think we might be carnivore, he says. What animals can we run down and kill with our bare hands? Well, I suppose you could do a squirrel, couldn't you, if you were very quick? God endowed us with hands for picking fruit and fingernails to peel fruit. God gave us natural love for animals, which is why you love your farm. It's not the killing and eating of the animals, it's the connection and love of the animals, he says. So do you agree with him? Is this, are we making a mistake in our diets? There'll be those that have carnivore diets, and of course carnivores don't go out and tear those animals to bits and then eat them while they're just sort of still alive and gushing with blood. They would say, well, no, they go and cook them. And perhaps the cooking, I don't know really. I suppose the cooking is the process in which it seals in some of the either flavour for certain or for the meat. Now, I don't know where John actually lives. He doesn't live in the south coast where I live. And it's all very well to say our ancestors lived in warm climates. How do we know that? I mean, these days, how do we know anything is true? How do we know that we we were living in those warm climates? How do we know that? Where is the evidence? How can you point to it? And whose evidence are you taking, and whose authority? These days, the history of anything is very dubious. So this is what we've been told. Of course, we've been told by other experts who's told us what we should or shouldn't do. So I am a bit dubious about that. Yes, I mean, if you're going back to sort of the Garden of Eden type touch, but we don't live in those situations anymore. And if you're waiting to have some fruit now, you'd be waiting a hell of a long time. And what are you going to do? Are you going to import that fruit from other countries? Are you going to use all the carbon and all the technology and all of that and have it stored for ages in fridges? This is what I don't really completely understand. And people in other climates, what about Eskimos? Are they called Eskimos still? I don't know. Maybe I've got that technically wrong. But those people who live up there on those very cold plains who eat fish, they cook those fish, don't they? And they were able to cook fish as soon as the discovery of fire was done. They thought, well, hang on a minute, it smells actually quite nice. Are we not adaptable creatures, or are we supposed to just stay in that primeval state of picking what available food there is? And of course, yes, if you live in an abundance of fruit and you've got lovely blackberries and black currants and strawberries and apples and oranges and things all at hand, all over the place, well, of course, why wouldn't you eat that? It would be lovely. You wouldn't have to bother. But if you're shivering cold and there's no other food going around, and you know that you can grow some root vegetables, and those root vegetables are going to give you the necessary minerals that you need, why would you not eat those? And if you manage, as you can, as we have, using arrows, flint arrows and spears to capture beings, creatures, and then cook them up, why wouldn't you do that? So I find it a fascinating argument, but is it true? And is it just somebody who, does not like the idea of anybody else eating anything other than what they want, or is imposing their will on all of us? We see so much of that in this world. And the live and let live. And, I don't care what people want to eat. They can eat whatever they damn well like. And in my show, of course, I'm only passing on what advice that's come to me, that I've considered, thought worthy of passing, or indeed tried out myself, like drinking raw milk, which I find is very beneficial. Indeed, going to farm shops where the farmers are actually producing their own meat and eating that and noticing the taste. But if people want to go to supermarkets and have food and fruit that has been stored, sprayed with all sorts of pesticides, infesticides and so on, then it's entirely up to them, of course. It's not for me to say what people do with their lives. They're their own lives. You've got your own autonomy, have you not, to do what you damn well like. And you've got your own autonomy to send me emails to tell me that the reason I'm ill is because I'm not eating enough fruit. Now, I eat a pretty balanced diet, to be honest with you. So I'm not convinced that that's just the reason that I was not very well. And actually, we do live in a toxic environment. We know what they're doing up in the air, in the skies. We know how the weather is being manipulated. I mean, you only have to have lived a certain number of decades to realize that what weather systems we're going through at the moment are very unusual and different. And if you have your own modicum of intelligence, you can work out that the man-made global warming myth is just that, a myth, that this weather difference is not to do with the fact that we've been putting CO2 into the atmosphere. It's the fact that we've been putting and spraying and sprinkling and mucking about with weather manipulation now for several decades. And we've got too sophisticated at it, and people in charge of the button are not the right people to be in charge of any buttons whatsoever, if you ask me. But there you are. Nobody did ask me, so I will shut up. It is a happy new year, and I hope that this year, 2025, is going to prove to be the turning point where people perhaps will look at their environment, look at who they are, look at the type of life they want to live and the type of governance they'd like to help them to achieve the ends they wish, will either turn their back on the tyranny and get on and just enjoy life, or change the situation so that it is more beneficial to all of us everywhere. So I wish you a happy new year. I hope that your happy new year day goes very lovely. It's a bit windy out there, so if you're going to fly a kite, just be careful you don't go flying with it. And if you're going skating, do give a thought for that organist's son at 15 who slipped over and crushed his skull in 1871. Tragic.